we're doing the investigation because we all loved Jeff very much, and the Jeff that we know would not do this.
Right.
And I know his patients agree. The Jeff, the Dr. Bradstreet, they know he would not do this. You're talking about a man who had the FDA back in
Three.
2003. He fought that and won. And you're talking about a man who, throughout his whole entire career, always went against the grain. This was not something new to Jeff. He always knew that he was bucking the system, so to speak, the mainstream medical. He was always he always thought outside the box. So to actually believe the rumor that, oh, the FDA came in and that was it, that just totally made him decide to check out and abandon his patients is not correct. It isn't.
Well, again, this is, I know no one that has known Jeff longer than I do, except my brother. And Jeff and I were closer. And to think that anybody could say this besides me, I think is wrong. Jeff was a leader. He was in autism. He was one of the top generals. He was caring, compassionate, full of love for his patients. Went out of his way to serve his patients and the parents that were involved in it. He understood the parents better than anybody because he was one. And to think that this field general would walk away from the largest battle of his life, which would be winning the war on autism, just because they had some DEA agents and some FDA agents walk into his office and harass him about GCMAF, is absurd. Absolutely absurd. He was not a coward. He wasn't afraid of the government. He worked for the government. He was, a captain in the Air Force. He wasn't afraid of them.
That's very important. I think people don't realize too how many holistic doctors, medical doctors, have to deal with the feds writing letters or going into the office. It happens more often than people probably know or realize. So I appreciate that.
Along those same lines, we can, again, I worked with Jeff in his practice in the Good News Doctor Foundation, and he cared about his employees. So not only do we have him leaving the parents with no place to go for their children, all the prescriptions and treatments left undone. He had, I don't know how many people in his office there, 5, 6, 7 people that he would have cared about like they were his own children and was a provider for. And then his wife, who he loved dearly, that he would just walk away from all that just because they came in and wanted to, harass him about GCMAF. Doesn't make any sense that he would want to commit suicide. And I believe that, and I'm not going to quit. Our family's not going to quit until we get to the bottom of it, and we know the truth. Are we going to know it 100%? I can't answer that, but I know that we're going to know in our spirit that either he did or he didn't. But right now, we don't know.
Right.
No one.
Right. Yeah. And what really gets me is these so-called skeptics. I hope you don't mind me interjecting here, but I think I appreciate that. They say, you know what? Oh, I mean, they say this in articles. Hey, he was investigated. He must have done this. But yet they always want so much evidence, which I understand for their, whatever their agenda is with science, whatever it is. But suddenly it's okay for them just to jump to conclusions and say, oh, well, it must have been this, So suddenly, I guess, evidence and logic, flew out the window, and they're just going to jump to assumptions. So that that I think is one of the most upsetting things to me with this, is that people just make assumptions. And I think you knew him better than most and knew him the longest. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. So,
Well, and one last thing in regard to the raid, because I know there's uh, rumors or speculation. Um, to our knowledge, and we have asked, they did not shut him down. They did not tell him he couldn't practice anymore. None of that appeared to have happened.
Froze no accounts.
Accounts weren't frozen. They were not prohibiting him from practicing. So again, a picture has been painted that he succumbed to this pressure of the FDA coming in, but quite honestly, it wasn't what people are making it sound like. Was it a serious thing? Well, of course, but not to the extent of it causing him to just go out and take his own life.
I appreciate you saying that, Candace. And I know we just talked briefly with about this group of people who might have instigated this, or are you open to talking about
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's very well known that there is a group of individuals that are very much against any form of medical or biomedical treatment for children with autism. And it's even been said that GCMAF is abusive and harmful to children. And again, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Jeff's patients that have stood up and would say none of the treatments that Dr. Bradstreet ever used were harmful to children. He would not do that. He was a parent to a child with autism. He loved children. He would never and has never used any form of treatment that is abusive to children. I understand if a group wants their right to not treat autistic children, but that does not give them the right to force their opinion or their beliefs and start saying that when people do use treatments to try to recover their children, they're child abusers. That is intolerable.
Well,
that is not right.
And I think, here's the very interesting thing that I've found out about what's going on. I've been working more with the criminal investigation, but my wife has been going back and doing all this back research on GCMAF and all of Jeff research and everything. And to me, it's interesting for them, this group that we're talking about, to call into question and to state things about the abusive research, and there's no research and all that.
No evidence.
And they have, today I read 142 articles, published medical articles about how safe GCMAF is. Okay. But they'll tell you that it's abusive and it harms kids and it's terrible, but they don't have to produce any
evidence
that says there's any clinical proof that shows that it was doing harm. They just have to say it, and we're supposed to believe it, that it's true. I don't know where we got to in America like that.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that is really disturbing is how our papers here they're taking this information from this group, and again, they're not supplying the evidence. Instead, they're just taking this as though it's true because this group is so against treating children with autism. This is a free country. Parents should have the choice of if they want to treat their children. And by the way, all of the treatments are safe. They're not abusive. And I can only speak, obviously, of what Jeff was doing. And that's what I'm speaking of. In all his years of treating children with autism, he never, ever used anything that was abusive to children.
And I think he would know, as having been a doctor for so many years, the the protocols and all that. I mean, I know you have to be very specific, so he knew. Yeah, he knew, not to
And
misuse.
I know a lot of people have, but I would encourage people, especially people that maybe aren't in the field of autism or saw any of his lectures. If you just watch his lectures, how close we are to a cure in autism, just this last May at Autism One, if you listen to his lectures, all you will hear is a doctor who has his research, he has his proof, and he himself states over and over, you have to go by protocols. You cannot just take something and apply it. You have to do it under a doctor's care. He was very clear on that. So I just wanted to clear that up, that um, for whatever reason, there's that group out there, and our papers here seem to publish it a lot. And again, we haven't seen any of their clinical data or evidence proving that specifically GCMAF is harmful.